Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books. We've started to read the Brhad Bhagavatamrta, which is not one of Srila Prabhupada's books. So why should we be reading that book on the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books? Because the person who translated this book and the commentary for the first time in English, Gopi Puranadana Prabhu, one of my best friends and dear ones, who left this world quite unexpectedly and shockingly, translated this book. And Srila Prabhupada, in the first, for the Adi Leela of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, said that we must read this book. So, putting the two together, I'm reading this book during the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books, and it's not disappointing, by the way. From what I've heard and understand and felt, it's spot on, as they say. Okay, before we read the Brhad Bhagavatamrta, right here in the live studios in Hythe, Kent, southeast England, within vision of the English channel, we're going to read Srimad Bhagavata Mahima Stotram, which was written by the author of Brhad Bhagavatamrta, Srila Sanatana Goswami. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu spoke or taught directly Srila Sanatana Goswami for more time than any other person on the earth. And as a result of this, the Brhad Bhagavatamrta came into the world. Although it was there before, but it was brought back into the world by Srila Sanatana Goswami's mystic meditation. So, from Sri Krishna Lila Stava, here is Srimad Bhagavata Mahima Stotram. Sarva Shastrabdi Piyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnaja Sarva Lokaika Drik Prada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabhu Kalidwandodita Ditya Sri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master, Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshakshadhayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Sri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madguru Man Mahadana Mannishtadaka Madbhagya Madananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu saduta dayin atini chochata kada hanamun chakadachin mam premna rit kantayospura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we reached the second chapter of the first part of Brhad Bhagavatamrta, Narada Muni is traveling from one devotee to another, glorifying that devotee as the best of all of Krishna's devotees, and each of them is refuting his praise and redirecting the praise to a devotee that devotee accepts to be a better devotee, who's received more mercy. So we're on text 84, and Lord Brahma, after refuting Narada's praise of himself, is about to glorify Lord Shiva. Text 84. By Krishna's grace, Lord Shiva and his wife are able to award liberation to candidates like me who eagerly want it. Commentary. Principal demigods like Indra and Brahma enjoy high posts in the administration of the universe, but after carrying out extensive duties for many millions of years, they may tire of this burden. Thus, liberation from material existence begins to look more and more attractive to them. In the midst of all the pomp and luxury of heavenly rulership, many demigods quietly harbor the desire for liberation. Here Lord Brahma groups himself with lesser demigods, even though he is an empowered incarnation of the personality of Godhead. Speaking from humility, he describes himself as just another appointed administrator with selfish motives of his own. Text 85. Indeed, this is Lord Brahma speaking, indeed, everyone who lives on Lord Shiva's planet is liberated. By his mercy, so many persons have become liberated souls and even pure devotees of Krishna. Commentary. Lord Shiva is Nitya Mukta, eternally liberated, and his devotees are liberated also. Many other fortunate souls living on lower planets like the earth have also been blessed by his mercy and instructions, which have given those souls the strength to advance spiritually in various ways. 86. To consider Lord Shiva different from Krishna is a serious spiritual deviation. The personality of Godhead tolerates offenses against himself, but not against Lord Shiva. Commentary. Lord Shiva is described as a recipient of Lord Vishnu's mercy, but this does not mean that the two lords are different from one another in the same way that Lord Vishnu differs from the Jivas. The Padma Purana includes the Namaparad, Bhanjana Stotra, a list of 10 offenses against chanting the Lord Vishnu's name. Therein it is said, Shivasya Shri Vishnor Ya Iha Gunanamadi Sakalam Diyat Vinam Pashyat Sa Kalu Hari Namam Namahita Kada. One who sees differences between any of Lord Shiva's qualities and names and those of Lord Vishnu is an antagonist to Harinama. Padma Purana, Brahma Kanda, 25:15. Lord Vishnu cannot tolerate offenses against Lord Shiva because Lord Shiva is the greatest of Lord Vishnu's empowered incarnations. Lord Shiva is especially empowered to distribute in the material world the elevated tastes of pure devotional service. Now we should make a comment here, because when Srila Prabhupada gave us the aparads, the 10 offenses, he translated this verse in such a way as that anyone who considers the holy name of Lord Krishna to be equal to or independent of Lord Vishnu is creating an aparad, a namaparad. So Srila Prabhupada and his teachings to us emphasized the difference that we should not see Lord Shiva's name as to be equal to Krishna's name. That's a namaparad. But it's also an offense to be independent, according to the translation of the verse that Prabhupada gave us. So he emphasized that we should see the difference, not make it the same, equal. At the same time, we should not see it as independent, because Lord Shiva is a qualitative incarnation of Krishna. He's actually originally Sada, Shiva, one of the aspects of Mahavishnu. And when Mahavishnu glances at Maya, his glance injects time and the living entities into the material world by that glance, which is Sadashiva, his aspect of Sadashiva. And when Lord Sadashiva touches and has intercourse with Maya and injects all the living beings into the material nature, at that time Lord Shiva touches, or Lord Vishnu touches, the material energy and transforms into Lord Shiva. So we should not make the mistake also of offending Lord Shiva, thinking he's independent of Lord Vishnu, because he isn't. Text 87 and 88. So it's an offense to consider his name equal to Vishnu and to worship Lord Shiva separate from Vishnu. But it's also an offense not to consider him independent and not consider him the greatest Vaishnava. Okay, text 87 and 88. When Maya, the master of Tripura, grew intoxicated with pride by Lord Shiva's benediction and placed Lord Shiva in danger, and when Lord Shiva was troubled by other demons like Vrikasura, the Supreme Lord saved him and encouraged him with nectarian words. And sometimes, to broadcast Lord Shiva's glories, Lord Krishna takes the role of his subordinate and worships him with intimate devotion. Commentary. Lord Shiva once empowered Maya Danava to construct for the demons of Tripura a well of heavenly nectar that could revive the dead. On another occasion, Lord Shiva granted Vrikasura the power to crack anyone's head into pieces by merely touching it with his hand. Lord Shiva also granted great strength and influence to demons like Ravana. Each of these demons became intoxicated with his acquired perfections and created trouble for Lord Shiva. Maya made it difficult to destroy Tripura. Vrika tried to test his power on Lord Shiva's head, compelling Lord Shiva to flee for his life. And Ravana moved Kailas mountain from its base. Each time Lord Shiva came to save, Lord Krishna came to save Lord Shiva, he drank up Mayadanava's well, beguiled Vrika into touching his own head, and, as Sri Ramachandra, killed Ravana with bow and arrows. These famous episodes, briefly alluded to here, are elaborately described in various scriptures, including Srimad Bhagavatam. Brahma points out that although Lord Nrsingadev had rebuked him, the Supreme Lord did not treat Lord Shiva's offenses the same way. Instead, responding to Lord Shiva's remorse, the Lord generally tried to encourage him, saying, for example, about Brikasura, "Just see, O Mahadev, my Lord, how this wicked man has been killed by his own sinful reactions. Indeed, what living being can hope for good fortune if he offends exalted saints? What to speak of offending the Lord and spiritual master of the universe?" Bhagavatam 10, 88, 38, and 39. The Supreme Lord in his incarnation as Parashuram worships Lord Shiva in loving reciprocation by advertising Lord Shiva's greatness. Text 89 and 90. Although Krishna was personally present at the churning of nectar from the milk ocean, he and the rulers of the universe chose to worship Lord Shiva, the life and soul of Gauri. Lord Shiva collected and drank the terrible poison, which thereafter became his ornament. He was then ceremonially bathed in the presence of everyone assembled and was glorified with floods of praise. Commentary. In the presence of Lord Krishna, the demigods had no need to fear destruction from the hala poison churned from the ocean of milk. Krishna chose, however, not to counteract the poison himself, but to give Lord Shiva an opportunity to show his prowess. The Supreme Lord and the Prajapatis honored Lord Shiva with Vedic hymns and other prayers, entreating him to save them. Their request was so strongly presented that Lord Shiva took the risk of drinking all the poison, ignoring the objections of his dear wife, Gauri. The demigods praised Lord Shiva for a feat even Lord Vishnu had not performed. From then on, the blue marks made on Lord Shiva's throat by the poison became renowned as his unique ornament. Text 91. The Puranas sing of Lord Hari's compassion toward Lord Hara. You surely know all of this and more, O thoughtful sage. To recall these glories, you need only exercise your memory. Commentary. Lord Hari's attitude toward Lord Hara is something like a father's affection for his son. Narada can remember other instances of Lord Shiva's displaying his glories. For example, when he blessed Lord Krishna to have an excellent son, Samba. 92. Sri Parikshit said, O dear mother, affectionate protector of your son, Narada bowed down to his spiritual master, Lord Brahma. And when Brahma saw his son Narada, eager to set off for Kailas, Brahma then told him something more. Commentary. A father should be honored as a kind of spiritual master, all the more if he has given essential instructions in Krishna consciousness. Brahma is the father of all fathers among the living entities, and he personally taught his youngest son, Narada, the science of Srimad Bhagavatam. Because Brahma is omniscient within the material universe, he knew that Narada wanted to go to Mount Kailas, Lord Shiva's abode in the universe. Noticing that Narada was glancing down from Brahmaloka in the direction of Kailas, Brahma decided to suggest a better idea. Text 93. Sri Brahma said, Kuvera once earned the gratitude of Lord Shiva by devotedly worshipping him. From then on, within this universe, Lord Shiva has submitted to Kuvera's authority on Kuvera's Mount Kailas. 94. Lord Shiva, the husband of Uma, lives there as the guardian of Kuvera's side of the heavenly sphere. Accompanied by suitable attendants, he shows but a small fraction of his opulence. Commentary. Kuvera, the appointed treasurer of heaven, rules the northeast. Pleased with Kuvera, Lord Shiva, despite his own elevated position, takes up menial service as Kuvera's guard. Lord Shiva's wife Uma and several of his associates and servants accompany Lord Shiva in Kailas, which compared with his eternal abode outside the universe is modest in opulence and entourage. Brahma implies, if you go to see Lord Shiva on Kuvera's Kailas, you will not be able to understand fully how much greater Lord Shiva is than I. 95. Just as the personality of Godhead Krishna, brought under control by the devotion of his servants, like me, resides on my planet, and in heaven and elsewhere, Lord Shiva lives in Kailas, displaying suitable pastimes. Commentary. The Supreme Lord reciprocates with his best devotees in the world, in this world, Brahma, Kashyapa, and so on, by living with them, personally in heaven, below heaven on the earth, above heaven on Maharloka, and elsewhere. In each incarnation, the Lord appears with suitable pastimes, paraphernalia, family and friends. 96. Now let me tell you the opinion of the Vayu Purana. The abode of Sri Mahadev lies outside the seven coverings of the universe. Commentary. The material universe is enclosed within seven concentric shells made of earth and the other basic elements. Outside them all lies the imperishable realm of Lord Shiva. In contrast to all the planets inside the shells, planets that are temporary products of material nature, this abode of Shiva's is not a creation of Maya. In Shivaloka, there is no unhappiness. That world is attained by the best of Lord Shiva's devotees, the ones who understand him to be non-different from Sri Krishna. Not the Shaivites, who are karmis or jnanis, or who worship Lord Shiva as an independent supreme controller. Text 97 and 98. Eternal and full of happiness, that abode is absolutely real. It can be attained by the best of Lord Shiva's servants. There, Lord Shiva, served by the most excellent regalia, reveals himself in his full splendor, surrounded by companions who share opulence and beauty equal to his. As his personal deity, he worships Lord Sankarshan, not different from himself. What amazing wonders did Lord Shiva in this manifestation not display? Commentary. In his original abode, Lord Shiva displays his full opulence, including ever-existing palaces and airplanes, and his unequaled personal assets of religion, wealth, sense enjoyment, liberation, and devotion to the Supreme Lord. His emblems of rulership, such as his jewelry, chamara fans, and royal paraphernalia, surpass those of Brahma and the other demigods. On Shivaloka, Lord Shiva always worships the personality of Godhead in his form as Sri Sankarshan, who has thousands of serpent hoods. Both Lord Sankarshan and his expansion, Lord Shiva, are incarnations of the Supreme Godhead, and so they are non-different. When the time comes for the material universe to be annihilated, Rudra, the destroyer, appears from Sri Sankarshan. That Rudra is the specific aspect of Lord Shiva, who presides over the material mode of ignorance. Everyone who sees Lord Shiva worshipping Sankarshan, one expansion of the Supreme worshipping another, becomes astonished, especially when Lord Shiva dances in ecstasy and offers wonderful prayers. Lord Shiva's worship of Sri Sankarshan can also be seen in the earthly planetary system, in Ilavritavarsh, as Shukadev Goswami describes in the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 17, text 99. You have the power to go there because you have pure devotion for him. Therefore go, take shelter of him, and see the real mercy of Krishna. Commentary. Because Narada respects Lord Shiva properly as an expansion non-different from Lord Krishna, and therefore loves Lord Shiva with spontaneous devotion, there is no bar to his entering Shivaloka. If Narada is to go there and take shelter of Lord Shiva by offering respects and praise, he will be able to see the mercy of Krishna in the ecstasy and opulences of Lord Shiva. Text 100. Sri Parikshit said, My dear mother, after Narada received these instructions, he departed for Shivaloka with joyful anticipation, chanting Shiva, Krishna. Commentary. The gist of Brahma's advice to Narada is that he should have faith in Lord Shiva as non-different from Lord Sri Krishna. Even though this advice was familiar to Narada, he was inspired to hear it. He welcomed the opportunity Brahma was giving him to show the world the extent of Lord Shiva's glories. He was also curious about what he would find when he arrived at Shivaloka. Thus end the 2nd chapter of part 1 of Srila Sanatana Goswami's Brhad Bhagavatamrta, entitled Divya in Heaven. Jai, Sri Narada Muni's transcendental voyage and survey taken among the greatest devotees of the Lord, especially Lord Indra, Lord Brahma, and now Lord Shiva. Haribol. Gaur Premanandi. Hari Haribol. Okay, here we go. Chapter 3. Panchachatita. Prapanchatita, beyond the material world. Text 1 through 4. Sri Parikshit said, arriving in Shivaloka, from a distance, the sage Narada saw Lord Shiva, Sri Hara, who had just finished his worship of Lord Sankarshan, Sri Hari, entranced in ecstatic love. Lord Shiva was dancing and loudly singing the glories of his Lord, while his associates played instrumental music and shouted, Jai, Jai. With great affection, he praised his assistants like Nandishwara, as well as the goddess Uma, who was expertly clapping her hands. The sight of all this delighted Narada. Vibrating his veena and nodding his head to show respect, he called out several times, You are the greatest recipient of Krishna's mercy. And in a sweet voice, he recounted to Lord Shiva everything just told to him by their father, Lord Brahma. Commentary. 1 minute. Commentary. Lord Shiva had just finished worshipping his deity, Lord Sankarshan. The rituals of his worship were similar to those Narada had witnessed on earth at Prayag. But at the end of the worship, Lord Shiva displayed the symptoms of ecstasy described in this verse. Worship of the Supreme Lord's deity attracts both neophytes and advanced souls. But Vaishnavas who are fully self-realized enjoy intimate relationships with their worshipable deity. For such Vaishnavas, the Lord's acceptance of even the simplest act of devotion brings profound devotional ecstasies. Thus, Narada found Lord Shiva in a trance of Sankirtan, reciting the prayers to Lord Sankarshan, similar to those recorded in the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam 5:17-18. O my Lord, you are the only worshipable person, for you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the reservoir of all opulences. Your secure lotus feet are the only source of protection for all your devotees, whom you satisfy by manifesting yourself in various forms. O my Lord, you deliver your devotees from the clutches of material existence. Non-devotees, however, remain entangled in material existence by your will. Kindly accept me as your eternal servant. Since Lord Shiva is an incarnation of the personality of Godhead, and Lord Shiva and the personality of Godhead are therefore non-different, Lord Shiva does not need to worship Lord Sankarshan to become purified from material illusion. Lord Shiva performs worship externally with standard paraphernalia to educate the world about the transcendental tastes of devotional service. Brahma is also considered an incarnation of Godhead, but Shiva and Brahma are not equal in status. Lord Shiva is not different from Vishnu in a more literal sense. The post of Brahma is almost always occupied by a jiva, whereas no jiva can ever become Shiva Tattva. Many statements from revealed scriptures characterize Lord Shiva as non-different from Lord Vishnu. For example, in the Padma Purana, Brahmakanda 25:15, in the description of the 10 offenses against Lord Vishnu's holy names, we read, Shivasya Shri Vishnur Yaiha Gunanamadi Sakalam Diyabi Nam Pashet Sakalo Harinam Ram Hitakaraha. One who sees differences between any of Lord Shiva's qualities and names and those of Lord Sri Vishnu is an antagonist to Harinam. There are no similar injunctions about the non-difference of Brahma and Vishnu. Authorized scriptures state that persons like Vasishta, who are certainly finite jivas, will become Lord Brahma in their own universes in future lives. Theoretically, any jiva soul can attain the post of Brahma. As Lord Shiva told the Prachetas, Swadharma Nishta Shata Janmani Janmavi Puman Vidinchatam Etitatak Param Himam. A person who strictly executes his occupational duty without deviation for 100 births becomes qualified to occupy the post of Brahma. And if he becomes more qualified, he can approach me, Lord Shiva. Bhagavatam 4:24, 29. These words state that a jiva can join Lord Shiva, not that he can become Shiva. Narada has included Lord Shiva in his search for recipients of the Supreme Lord's mercy because Lord Shiva is a special incarnation of the Lord in the form of his own devotee. The followers of Lord Shiva, whom Narada saw on Shivaloka, were all great Vaishnavas who deeply imbibed their master's mood of Vishnu Bhakti. Lord Shiva praised them for their artistic accompaniment, especially as consort Parvati for her hand clapping, because their performance was manifested directly from pure devotion. Witnessing all this, Narada also became ecstatic. He danced so enthusiastically that he was unable to offer prostrate obeisances. And since he did not want to stop playing his veena, he showed respect simply by nodding his head. Then, wanting to say something to show approval, Lord Shiva's behavior. Then, wanting to say something to show approval of Lord Shiva's behavior, he proceeded to recount what Brahma had told him about Lord Shiva's glories. 5 and 6. Narada came closer, hoping to touch the dust of the lotus feet of Lord Shiva, the best friend of the Vaishnavas. But as the sage came near, Lord Shiva, a flood of Krishna-conscious pleasure driving him wild, forcibly drew Narada closer and embraced him. Without hesitating, he asked Narada with respect, "Dear son of Brahma, what are you saying?" Commentary. Totally absorbed in ecstasy, Lord Shiva, when turning to greet Narada, at first found what Narada was telling him difficult to understand. Text 7 and 8. Absorbed in the taste of talking with that superlative Vaishnava Narada, Lord Shiva then stopped his playful dancing and sat down. He sat on a straw mat in the Virasan posture, and a few of his gentle companions seated themselves around him. With devotion, Narada bowed down to Lord Shiva, the life and soul of Parvati, and chanted the 6-syllable Rudra mantra. Commentary. One who is observing a serious vow should sit on a kusha mat, called a rishi, assuming the meditative hero's posture, which expresses one's firm determination. The asana is defined in the Yoga Shastras. The Rudrashat Angaka is a mantra of the Vedas. It begins with the words Namaste. And it's almost 8 o'clock, so I'm going to stop here at text 9, and we're going to hear now Narada glorifying Lord Shiva. Hare Krishna. Shri Brhad Bhagavatamrta ki jai. Lord Brahma ki jai. Narada Muni ki jai. Lord Shiva ki jai. Okay, I'm just waiting for the nectar to pour from the reflections and comments and discussions of the Vaishnavas, the assembled sages out there in cyberspace. Hare Krishna. Our trusty sidekick, Abhaya Das Brahmachari is rifling through the comments here. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare.
The first question is from Brhad Bhagavatamrta.
Brhad Bhagavatamrta first out of the blocks again.
He says, Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. What does it mean that Lord Brahma is materially omniscient?
He's materially omniscient within the material world. Lord Vishnu is omniscient throughout the material universes and in the spirit and the spiritual world. But Lord Brahma is omniscient by Lord Krishna's empowerment within his universe, the universe that he is constructed, or let's say engineered, after having been given the ingredients and the intelligence by Lord Vishnu. Means that Brahma is aware of all the things that are going on inside of his universe. Past, present, and future. But even still, because he's not the same as Krishna, he's not omniscient the way Krishna is, still, he had to be corrected by Krishna when he tried to trick him, as we read about in the last chapter. Hare Krishna.
Next is something from Avaduta Rai.
Avaduta Rai is become a regular.
He says, Hare Krishna, dear Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada. The most striking was to me what you already explained. The second offense is double interpretation of the Sanskrit. It seems there is a double trouble. Whatever one thinks there is an offense to the holy name, namely whether one considers Shiva different from Vishnu and two considers Shiva non-different from Vishnu. Perhaps this is another foolish thought. Hare Krishna.
No, you're correct. But we don't worship Lord Shiva on the same level as Krishna, even though he is considered to be, in his original state, to be non-different from Vishnu. But Lord Shiva touches the material world in a way that Lord Vishnu doesn't, and therefore, although he's considered to be non-different, he's also different. So we should be very careful not to make offenses against Lord Shiva. Very careful. But at the same time, we don't worship Lord Vishnu or Lord Shiva as being equal to Lord Krishna. Both things are true at the same time. Therefore it says to consider the holy name of Lord Shiva to be equal to or independent of Lord Vishnu is an offense. Hare Krishna.
Something else from Avadut, right?
Yeah.
He says, I heard that the four heads of Brahma act and do all the same. Why does he need four heads? Can he not do all the functions with one head?
He sees he has four heads because he has to look at all the four directions at the same time. Hare Krishna.
Next is a question from Brajaloka Devi Dasi.
Hare Krishna, Brajaloka.
She says, Hare Krishna, dear Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. We read today in the purport of the second chapter's 95th verse. The Supreme Lord reciprocates the devotion of the devotees by living with them. Lord Chaitanya taught us devotional service and separation as the highest perfection. Could you please explain how we should understand these two situations? Which is the bigger mercy, living with the Lord or serving Him in separation? Your servant.
Well, it depends on where you are. If you're living with the Lord, you can also serve Him in separation by the ecstatic symptom of Vaichitya, Prema Vaichitya, which means that you're so attached to the Lord that when you anticipate that you may be separated from Him, then you feel such intense separation that He disappears from your sight, and you are separated from Him in that sense, even though He's there right with you. So whether you're with the Lord or without the Lord, the service of the Lord in separation is actually more intense than being with the Lord directly. And therefore Lord Chaitanya is recommending that method of worship to please the Lord the most, to make us eligible to be with the Lord. So it's not that the devotee always keeps himself separate from the Lord in order to feel that separation. He also wants to be with the Lord. But the separation from the Lord and the ecstatic feelings of separation from the Lord make the meeting more ecstatic. And then the separation of the Lord makes that love even more ecstatic. So in that sense, the ecstasy of serving in separation from Krishna is the recommended method by Lord Chaitanya, because it's the most intense way to get Lord Krishna's attention, and so that He will bring us back to Him. Hare Krishna.
Next is something from Daityari Haridas.
Daitya Haridas, Hare Krishna.
He says, Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances, all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
The whale's army is on board.
He says, thank you again for the reading. The point you were making about the second offense to the holy name in seeing great personalities like Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva equal to or independent of Lord Vishnu was really interesting. I never really understood what that meant in total before. It gets me thinking there are many things about Krishna consciousness that I think I know, but actually don't.
Yes, the knowledge of Krishna consciousness, even the same thought, has different layers of understanding that are brought to us by great personalities who understand more levels of understanding than we do. That's why we're recommended to continuously hear again and again and again and again these scriptures, because these will reveal to us the different layers of meanings and bring us closer to Krishna. The more intimately you understand someone, the deeper your love can go. Because if you're really in love with someone, you want to know everything about that person. And you never want to not think about that person. So that level of love will come when we show our intense interest in Him by constantly hearing about Him over and over again. Hare Krishna.
A comment from Krishnangi Mulder.
And there's no end to it. We can never understand Krishna completely. That's what it means by He's inconceivable. Not that we can't conceive of Him, not that we can't know enough of Him to want to go back to Him and even to go back to Him. But even when we know all those things, He's always expanding, so therefore we can never know him completely. Therefore there's no end to the unfolding of Krishna consciousness, Krishna's greatness. Hare Krishna.
From Krishnangi Mulder.
From Krishnangri Mulder, okay, Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna Maharaj and assembled devotees, my attention was drawn to the quality of appreciation, that one tiny offering of service is so appreciated.
Yes. Wonderful. Thank you for pointing that out. That's ecstatic. Essential. Sometimes people think that this rasa is higher than that rasa, or this service is higher than that service, but it's not true. Prabhupada, in an absolute sense, all the services are equally pleasing and absolute. They're not material. Nothing is higher and lower in the spiritual world. But there are degrees of intimacy, and that's what the different rasas represent. Meaning that the Adi rasa, the conjugal love between Radha and Krishna, include all the other rasas. But that doesn't mean that a person who has attained the Vatsalya rasa, or the Sakhya rasa, or the Dasya rasa, feel themselves inferior to the personalities that are in higher rasas. They're satisfied, in other words, with that rasa, because that is their rasa. That is their eternal relationship with Krishna. Therefore, they're completely satisfied. They serve those other personalities, and therefore they taste, the effulgence of those other rasas, even from a different rasa. They don't feel the same feelings, that the parents feel towards Krishna, but they do. They do. By the association, by being close to them as family, village and family, they taste all the rasas from their own rasa. Because the basic rasa of all of the rasas is service. Therefore, the gopis think of themselves as maidservants. The gopis think of themselves as the maidservants of Krishna. The queens of Krishna think of themselves as the maidservants of Krishna. When Draupadi was inquiring from all the queens when they met in Kurukshetra, how they met Krishna and what is their secret for serving Krishna in that intimate relationship, they all ended their little soliloquies about that with the statement, and therefore I became Lord Krishna's maidservant. So first we have to think of ourselves as the eternal servant of Krishna, and gradually what that service will appear like in the spiritual world for us will be revealed to us. But we have to first of all become fixed in the attitude and the identity of being an eternal servant of Krishna, with no other existential identities. Sarvapadi vinirmuktam tatpadat nirma. Hare Krishna.
Something from Vamsi Vilasi Das.
Vamsi Vilasi Das, the whale's army keeps growing.
He says, Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. If it is an offense both to consider Shiva equal to Lord Vishnu and also to consider him independent from him, is that meaning it's offensive not to acknowledge his simultaneous oneness and difference with Vishnu?
Yes, But from our position, we emphasize what we heard from Srila Prabhupada. Even though this is an eternal truth, what you just said, still, in our worship of Krishna, under the direction of Srila Prabhupada, we don't worship Lord Shiva as equal to Krishna. That's our instruction from the eternal parampara coming from Lord Chaitanya. But when we go to the temple of Shiva, if we do, we bow down. We respect him. We respect the demigods. We don't disrespect the demigods. But we don't worship them as equal to Krishna. We don't worship them in the same way that we worship Krishna. We worship them as devotees of Krishna, and we worship Lord Shiva as the greatest devotee of Krishna. And when we hear Lord Shiva speaking about himself, as for example, in the 4th canto, Lord Shiva's prayers to Vishnu, then he reveals himself to be who he is, the eternal servant of Vishnu, in the form of Sankarshan.
There's a second part to his question, or a second question. He says, also is it correct that Advaita Acharya Prabhu is an incarnation of this Sadashiva, who is Mahavishnu's glance and resides on Shivaloka?
No. He is Mahavishnu himself. The Sadashiva that comes and touches the material world and turns into Lord Shiva is an aspect of Mahavishnu. But Advaita Acharya is Mahavishnu himself. Therefore, he's worshipped by Lord Chaitanya as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Not different from Vishnu. That is Lord Chaitanya's teaching. They are Vishnu Tattva. Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, and Advaita Acharya are all Vishnu Tattva. He's not Shiva Tattva. Shiva Tattva is a qualitative incarnation of Vishnu, but he's not Vishnu. Therefore, he's not to be worshipped on the same level as Vishnu. That is our teaching from Lord Chaitanya, coming down through our parampara system, and that is how we perfect our Krishna consciousness. See, the reason that Prabhupada emphasized this as opposed to the other is that the Shiva Tattvas, the Shaivites, rather, they worship Lord Shiva as God, period. And they worship Lord Shiva as inferior to Shiva. And they take this pastime in which Lord Vishnu offers worship out of respect for Lord Shiva as indication that he's inferior to Lord Shiva. And that's an offense. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya and all of his followers in his parampara emphasized this point. That Lord Mahavishnu, Advaita Acharya is Mahavishnu, Lord Nityananda is Shiva Tattva, Vishnu Tattva, Lord Balaram, who is the source of Sankarshan, and who is the source of Lord Shiva. Therefore, Shiva Tattva, Guru Tattva, these are very difficult tattvas to understand. So that realization has to be revealed to you as a result of your devotional achievements in devotional service. But our duty from here, from where we are, from the platform we're on, is to hear these things try to appreciate and try to understand them. And by doing that, gradually we're given the discrimination and the revelations not to be able to offend the different aspects of God and his expansions, and Lord Shiva especially, because he's neither Vishnu nor Jiva Tattva. Therefore he's very difficult to understand. Hare Krishna. So he's considered to be the greatest demigod, Lord Shiva, because he's not God, but he's greater than Lord Brahma and greater than any Jiva. He's Shiva. He's in between Lord Vishnu and the Jiva. Hare Krishna.
Next is something from Bhakta Ben.
Hare Krishna Bhakta Ben.
He says, I caught up on last night's reading today. Something that stood out was that those who perform sacrifices to become Lord Brahma don't always actually become Lord Brahma, but become residents of Brahmaloka.
Yes.
I've heard elsewhere that every jiva becomes Lord Brahma upon entering the material world. I wondered if the jiva becomes a resident of Brahmaloka or actually Brahma himself. Your servant, Bhakta Ben.
Both. What this is saying is that the jiva soul has the potential to become Lord Brahma. But he doesn't always become Lord Brahma. Because there's only one Lord Brahma in every universe. So how to understand that? I haven't totally understood this. How it says in some places that the jiva first becomes Lord Brahma, when he enters in the material world, and then degrades from there. I have not achieved that understanding to be able to explain it to you cogently enough to give you the realization. Sorry. Hare Krishna. I'll keep hearing and maybe I'll get it.
Next is a comment from Krishna Premavati.
Mm.
She says, Dandavat Pranams Maharaj. Since our Brahma is the head of our sampradaya and a pure devotee, even if he is Jiva Tattva, he is to be worshipped as being Sakshad Hari, meaning servitor Godhead. Lord Shiva is Shiva Tattva. He is eternally in his own category. Krishna and Shiva are like milk and yogurt. I like that analogy.
Yes. Perfect. Thank you.
Next is something from Vilas Manjari.
Mm-hmm.
She says, Dear Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. It's so nice to be on this tour of the material and spiritual world and hear of the ecstatic worship and dancing of Lord Shiva.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question about a comment on verse 86. Quote, Lord Shiva is especially empowered to distribute in the material world the elevated tastes of pure devotional service. Unquote. Could you comment on what this is referring to? Mostly we hear about Lord Shiva's interacting with and giving blessings to his worshippers in the material world, who are demons.
Yes, Lord Shiva is called the greatest Vaishnava because he can make anyone into a Vaishnava. We will hear more about Lord Shiva when he starts to speak about himself. This will be answered next, so we'll wait until Sanatana Goswami reveals this to us. But the fact is that devotees do come to Lord Shiva and they are elevated out of the material world and they achieve his planet, which is not, as we heard, remember, that it's in the spiritual world, it's not in the material world. There are some interpretations that it is in the place between the material and spiritual world, in the causal ocean. That's where his planet is. But it's not within the material world. It's not made of material elements. And there are some acharyas that I heard from Gopi Purandanabu about this, that state that Lord Shiva's eternal abode is in the last, it's not one of the material elements, but it's in the pradhan, that is, it's like a last covering, but it's not the causal ocean, and it's not in the material elements. It's in between. And that's where he is. His eternal abode is. So you can take your pick. There are different opinions about it. That we don't try to make those different opinions one different, or one false and one true. We accept them all. And they're seeing it from different angles of vision. Just like when you see from inside the universes, the causal ocean, it looks like a river. But when you look at it from the outside, it looks like an ocean. So the Viraja is river and the causal ocean are the same. It depends on the angle of vision. So sometimes there are different devotees who see things differently because they have a different relationship with Krishna, or they have a different angle of vision. So we shouldn't be confused. We're trying to repeat to you what we've heard from Srila Prabhupada's purports and the previous acharyas' teachings, which are contained within Prabhupada's purports. But it also does us well, to study the previous acharyas' comments, and as they become available to us through translators that we can trust, we will also hear those things eventually. When and how that will happen, I don't have access to that knowledge. Hare Krishna. And it's 25 after 8. I've gone 10 minutes over because you all put me into such happiness that I forgot time went by. But I have to go now because we have to get up earlier and we have to do what we have to do. So you'll forgive me. There are probably other comments. So those devotees can please forgive me if I didn't read out their comments or their Tonight I must go and take rest. Hare Krishna. Thank you again and again and again. Shri Brhad Bhagavatamrta ki jai. Sama Veda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bo. See you tomorrow night. Same place, same time, same topic. The creme of the Bhagavat. Hare Krishna.